Welcome to Economics, an overview of Chapter 3. So in this chapter, we're going to talk about supply and demand, where do prices come from. This video will cover the demand side of the market and the supply side of the market. We will talk about market equilibrium in another section. So, one of the things this chapter talks about is tablet computers were just 1% of the marketplace in 2006, contrary to Bill Gates' prediction 5 years earlier, saying that they would make up the majority of the sales at that time. I think he was a little early on this. In April 2010, Steve Jobs introduced the iPad, which was an immediate success. Within a year, the iPad 2 experienced similarly rapid sales. Intense competition ensued, including RIM Research in Motion's introduction of the BlackBerry Playbook, increasing the available choices of the products and lowering the prices consumers would pay for this product. So after this chapter, you should be able to answer the questions. So 7 months after the iPad was introduced, Samsung introduced the Galaxy tablet. Although at a disadvantage, it could still compete based on price and value. See if you can answer the questions by the end. Would you choose to buy a Galaxy Tab if it had a lower price than an iPad? If your income increased, would this affect your decision to buy which tablet you would buy? One thing to remember is that we're talking about a perfectly competitive market. This is a market that meets the conditions of many buyers and sellers, all firms selling identical products, and no barriers to enter the marketplace. We're going to discuss the variables that influence demand. So, a demand schedule. This is a table that shows the relationship between price of a product and quantity of a product demanded. Quantity demanded. This is the amount of good or service that a consumer is willing and able to purchase at a given price. Remember, these two words are key, willing and able. You have to be willing to purchase it, but you also have to be able to purchase it. Just because I want a Ferrari doesn't mean I'm able to purchase it. So I'm really not in that marketplace. Demand curve. This shows the relationship between price of a product and quantity of a product demanded. And when we talk about market demand, we're talking about the demand by all consumers for a given good or service. In the book, they use the example to show they're using tablets in this book. So we're going to talk about the demand for a tablet at any given price. Remember, whenever we're talking about supply or demand, the price is on the vertical axis, and the quantity demanded is on the horizontal axis, or the x-axis. This is y, this is x. So, as price changes, so does the consumers change the quantity of the tablet they are willing to buy. So, at $700, this is a demand schedule. It's showing the price and the quantity demanded. Now we're going to plot that on a graph. At $700, 3 million tablets per month would be sold. At $600, there would be 4 million tablets. So the price is decreasing and quantity is increasing. This is a negatively sloped line. Think about this. Demand is much easier for students to understand because demand is really the consumer side. The lower the price, the more willing you are to buy something. And we'll talk about how that plays into substitution goods and other goods that we feel are the same. But in general, the lower the price, the more people are willing to buy it. So this goes down, and if we were to go to at $300, there's 7 million a month that are willing to buy a tablet. So the law of demand, the rule that holding everything else constant, when the price of a product falls, the quantity demanded of that product will increase. And when the price of the product rises, the quantity demanded will decrease. What explains this? Well, number one, the substitution effect explains this. This is the change in quantity demanded of a good that results in a price change, making the good more or less expensive relative to substitute goods. In this chapter, if we believe that the Samsung Galaxy tablet and the iPad are the same, then the price of the iPad will influence our decision. If it increases or it's so much more than the Galaxy, we might take a substitution. The other idea is the income effect. The change in quantity demanded of a good that results from the effect of a change in the good's price on consumer purchasing power. So in a recession, when our consumer purchasing power was shrinking and people were being laid off, what happened? Well, certain goods, maybe you ate at McDonald's more, or maybe you shopped at Walmart more, because that you could save that money and you had to spread that money over more products, right? So that changed the purchasing power. Holding everything else constant. This is ceteris paribus condition. So you definitely need to know this. Ceteris paribus, all else equal condition. The requirement that when analyzing a relationship between two variables, in supply and demand, it will be price and quantity. Other variables must be held constant. We have to assume that we're only changing price or quantity and that other things in the marketplace aren't changing. Now, a shift in the demand curve is an increase or decrease in demand. So it's not price of the same product. It's an increase or decrease in demand. Movement along the line, or the demand curve, is an increase or decrease in quantity demanded. We'll illustrate this a little bit further in. So, figure 3-2. When consumers increase the quantity of a product they want to buy at any given price, the market demand increases or shifts to the right. So, a shift to the right basically means that at any given price, so here was demand 1. If we have an increase in overall demand, that shifts the curve to the right, and at that same price, quantity has increased. So here, we draw a little line down here. Here's the quantity. Sorry about that. And then if we have a decrease in demand, that's a shift to the left. And so at the same price, the quantity demanded will decrease. So there are some items that we'll figure out that cause this. So variables that cause the shift in market demand. Many variables other than price can influence demand. We will discuss the 5 most important. Number 1 is income. There's 2 types of goods that we're going to talk about. A normal good, which is a good for which demand increases as income rises and decreases as income falls. So I would say the cell phone market. Let's talk about iPhones. As my income goes up or my ability to purchase things, my purchasing power increases, I may demand an iPhone. Well, what just happened? The 5C came out right now. So they had a 5S and a 5C. Why? Because the 5S, the price of it, might preclude a lot of people from purchasing an iPhone. So they came out with a $99 option. But I would say in general, the iPhone is a normal good. As income increases or rises, then so does demand. As income falls, so does demand. An inferior good works the opposite way. As a good is a good for which demand increases as income falls and decreases as income rises. McDonald's is a perfect example of this. In the recession, McDonald's actually did better. Why? Not because the quality is not there, but because it's considered an inferior good. If I have less money, then I'm going to have to make difficult choices, right? Trade-offs. With that trade-off, I'm going to go to McDonald's, so it's an inferior good. So the demand for McDonald's increases as income is decreasing. And then when I make more money, if I get a raise, it's kind of like ramen noodles. You're all in college. You're probably eating ramen noodles, many of you. And so ramen noodles is most likely not something you will eat when you leave college. Maybe you'll overeat it, but it's because as your income rises, then you'll desire something different from that. Therefore, inferior good ramen noodles. The book illustrates how Quiznos and Subway would react. So they're saying that in this situation, Subway sandwiches are inferior good. So Subway seemed to fit the economic definition of an inferior good because demand increases as the income was falling, whereas Quiznos, slightly higher priced, fit the definition of a normal good. So during the recession, Quiznos did not do well, but during the recession, Subway did. Remember, it's not about low quality. It's just about consumers increasing their demand as income falls. So the very first item that we said shifts the demand is income. The next item is price of related goods. So there are substitutes, which are goods that can be substituted for the same purpose. So the iPhone or the Nokia Lumia or some other cell phone. As the price in that changes, as the price in the iPhone changes, it's going to affect the market for Nokia. Because if I just put out a $99 iPhone, and I believe that that's a substitute for another phone, well, that might change the demand for other phones in the $99 market. The other thing is pizza and hamburgers. We use this a lot in class because they're both food. Assuming that you like them equally, as the price of one good rises, your demand for the other good will go up because you're going to demand the lower priced item. Complements. These are goods that are used together. So, hamburgers and hamburger buns. Assuming you eat bread, if you stopped buying hamburger buns, what would happen to the hamburger? Well, if you stopped buying hamburgers, what would happen to the hamburger bun market? Well, if you stop buying hamburgers, they would decrease together. In substitutes, they react in opposite directions. In complements, they react in the same direction. It's like chips and salsa. If I'm not buying the chips, then I'm probably not buying the salsa. Taste. So things that can change. So there's price of related goods, then there's taste. These are subjective elements such as campaigns or trends can enter into a consumer's decision to buy a product. I think we talked about Snapchat and all these other things that people think they're really cool for the moment. Justin Bieber, maybe a little younger than you guys, but he's cool for the moment. Will he be cool, next year? I don't know. It's about popularity and campaigns and trends. The other thing that can affect this demand is demographics. These are the characteristics of a population with respect to age, race, and gender. So if we live here in the Northeast, we don't eat a lot of grits in the Northeast. But if you go down south, demand for grits increases significantly based on demographics. The next thing is expected future prices. Consumers choose not only which products to buy, but also when to buy them. If I know that Black Friday sales are coming up, demand will increase because right now it will decrease because I'm waiting for Black Friday. So I'm going to hold off on my shopping. So demand right now goes down. And when the prices go down, demand goes up. Expected future prices. What effect will the baby boomers have on the economy? So if all of these people are retiring, look at our percentage of people over the age of 65. What kind of demand will they have? Will they demand more or less medical care? Probably more, right? What about cars? Will they all be driving? What about the housing market? This truly affects the price of condos, one-floor homes, and ranches. It might actually mean that you can buy a bigger home, multi-level home, for less money because there's so many people demanding condos and one-floor homes that the baby boomers are buying that up. Changes the housing market, right? So let's talk about variables that shift the demand curve. If there is an increase in income, this will shift the demand curve right. Consumers will spend more of their higher incomes on the good. If there is an increase in income and the good is an inferior good, consumers will spend less on this, so demand will shift left or decrease because they'll spend more of their income on higher goods or normal goods. If there's an increase in the price of a substitute, so if hamburgers and pizza are substitutes and the price of hamburgers goes to $10 a hamburger, well, that means you're just going to demand more pizza because of what happened to the substitute good of hamburgers. Now, let's talk about chips and salsa. Now, if I only like to buy chips and salsa, but corn is being used for gas, so that increases the price of chips, I'm going to say, well, I don't know. If I have to pay $6 for a bag of chips, I'm not going to buy chips. And in return, I'm also not going to buy salsa. So that means that it is a complementary good, and salsa would shift to the left, decrease. Now, if there's an increase in the taste for the good, it's trendy, everyone has it, I need it, I want it, then demand, it just means we're willing to buy more of these at the same price, or at every price. Now, if there's a change in population, so if we increase the population, in general, demand is going to shift to the right because there's more people to buy. If we believe there is an increase in the expected future prices, so we think that gas prices are going to go up by $1 next week, what's going to happen to the demand for gas today? Well, the demand for gas today is going to increase immediately. So everyone will be at the gas pump, and so there'll be an increase in demand immediately to avoid the future higher price. We'll do some more work in class on these. We need to understand the difference between a change in demand and a change in quantity demanded. Okay, so if we change price for a tablet from $700, which is point A, to $600, which is point B, this is movement along the same curve. This is just a price change in the same marketplace. This is just a change in quantity demanded. It is not a change in overall demand. Now, if consumers' income increases, so we have more purchasing power, that's not going to move from A to B. That's going to actually move from A to C, which means at $700, we used to demand 3 million tablets a month, but now at $700, because the consumer's income has increased, we're going to demand 500. That's an increase of 2 million tablets per month, and that's a shift in demand, not quantity demanded. One of the things that entrepreneurs do is decide which products to develop and what the demand for these forecasted products are. Sometimes it's a hit, sometimes it's a miss. Forecasting demand for any new product can be challenging because it's difficult to gauge how consumers will find the new product useful. Same thing with the iPhone 5S and 5C that just came out. What's the demand? Overall, are they going to demand more of these? Are they going to demand more 5Cs because of the lower price and really it's not that significantly different from the 5S? Well, in 2011, Apple forecasted that it would sell 40 million iPads during the year. 2011 has passed and they sold slightly more than 40 million. Time will tell for future demand of tablets. I believe that the tablet or the combo tablet convertible laptop will be the future. Moving into the supply side of the market. This one's much more difficult. On the demand side, you can think like a consumer, which you're all used to thinking like a consumer. On the supply side, you always have to pretend to yourself you're a business owner. You own the business. You're going to supply it to the marketplace. Your goal is profit. We're going to discuss the variables that influence supply. So, quantity supplied. This is the amount of good or service that a firm is willing and able to supply at a given price. I may not be able to supply any more at a given price. It just may be a reality. So I must be willing and I must be able. A supply schedule is a table that shows the relationship between the price of the product and the quantity of the product to be supplied. A supply curve shows the relationship between the price of a product and the quantity of the product that will be supplied. So let's check this out. Now we're back into the tablet market. We're talking about tablets. Remember, the demand curve was facing downward sloping. As price decreased in demand, quantity increased. Supply works the opposite. As the price changes for Apple, Toshiba, Samsung, LG, and other tablet firms, as they're able to charge a higher price, they're willing to supply more. Why? Well, you have to have a factory, you have to be able to produce it, you might have to hire more people. So therefore, at $300 a tablet, they would only supply 3 million tablets a month. At $700 a tablet, they're willing to supply 7 million iPads a month, iPad tablet ideas. So, the law of supply states that the rule that holding everything else constant, which is ceteris paribus, increase in price causes an increase in quantity supplied, and a decrease in price causes a decrease in quantity supplied. Now, just like supply, we can have change in supply. This is when firms increase the quantity of a product they want to sell at any given price. A shift to the right in supply means that we will increase the quantity supplied at any given price. We'll talk about things that cause these shifts. And then if we want to decrease supply, we would shift the supply curve up and to the left. Variables that shift the market supply. The following are the most important variables that shift market supply. Price of inputs. They change the price of an input. Anything to be used in production of a good or service is the most likely factor to cause the supply curve to shift. So, if the price of the inputs change, that's going to change supply. A technology change. A technology change could be positive or negative in the ability of the firm to produce at a given level of output with a given quantity of inputs. We also have price of substitutions. Sorry, checking my time here. So, the price of substitutions in production. This is an alternative product that the firm could be producing called a substitution in production. So, if I am Coca-Cola, I have several things I could be producing. I could be producing bottled water, I could be producing juice, Powerade, or soda. So, price of substitution in production is the price of something else I could be producing with my time and resources. Number of firms in the marketplace. A change in the number of firms will change the supply. And then finally, expected future prices. If a firm expects that the price of a product will be higher in the future than it is today, there's an incentive to decrease the supply now and wait and increase it in the future when they can charge a higher price. Let's talk about variables that shift the curve. So, number one, if there's an increase in the price of an input, this would decrease supply. That means it's going to cost us more to produce it, which means we can't supply as much at that same price. If there is an increase in productivity, we're getting more efficient, that means that the cost of producing the good could fall, which means we could shift supply to the right or increase supply. If the price of a substitution in production increases, then we will shift or decrease demand for that product and we would produce more of the substitution. If there's an increase in the number of the firms, remember you always hear that competition is good. Well, that's because every time a new firm enters the marketplace, it's going to change the supply in that marketplace or increase the supply. That drives down the price of the product. And if there is an increase in the expected future price of a product, you will decrease supply today, hold out as a supplier or business owner. Remember, think like a business owner. You would decrease the supply and wait until you could charge more. We need to know the difference between a change in supply versus a change in quantity supplied. If the price of tablets rise from $500 to $600 a tablet, this will result in movement up the supply curve from point A, $500, to point B. This is not a change in supply. This is a change in quantity supplied. We just changed it from 5 million to 6 million. But that's because we changed the price. Now, if the price of an input decreases or there's a technology change, we shift the curve to the right and we go from point B, which is $600 a tablet, we sell 6 million. So point C, at the new $600 a tablet, we sell 8 million. So that's a change in supply. We will go over this again in class. You'll do some homework examples, but you need to know the difference between change in supply and change in quantity supplied. We will talk about market equilibrium in the next live class.